Hi everyone, I'm glad you're here. In today's conversation, I spoke with former Navy SEAL, a best-selling author, and someone who has pushed the boundaries of life while also daring to look inward. Through gentleness, he has healed and taken ownership of all aspects of his life. He's an incredibly good storyteller, and I'm convinced that everyone listening can learn valuable lessons. Get to know your blueprint with Ollie Ollerton. Ollie, I'm very happy to talk to you today. We're at the Biohacking Summit.
Yeah.
Well, actually not right now, but
Yep.
you're speaking tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, biohacking is like not because of the health aspect, but more about personal leadership. It's not about getting the best supplements or, of course, doing your breathing right, but it's more about understanding and taking control over those processes in your body.
Yeah.
And of course, it is very interesting to talk with you because talking about personal leadership, you have been at the most dangerous places on earth and you're still here.
Which is good.
Which is very good. Yeah, very happy to have you here.
For me, anyway.
Yeah, definitely. And you have not only been on the hard side, like being in action, but you also did the healing part. And you're also very, what is the Dutch word of the English word? Engaged with society.
Yeah.
That's what at least how I interpret it. So very happy to have you here. If we could introduce you a little bit.
Yeah.
How would you introduce yourself to the audience that doesn't know you yet?
Yeah. Ollie Ollerton. I'm a former UK Special Forces soldier. I came from the shadows into the spotlight in 2015 with a very popular show in the UK called SAS Who Dares Wins. That now has been going on since 2015. I'm no longer part of SAS Who Dares Wins UK, but I am filming SAS Australia, which is very much the same version of the show. So basically, I don't like saying the word because it's not what I'm all about, but I'm a celebrity, for want of a better word. And I have a company, which has always been my dream, even before I got the exposure, which is called Breakpoint. Breakpoint's mission is to create a globally identified brand recognized for the positive growth and development of others. And I just want to go back to that statement you said about the biohackers thing, because I think that's really important. You know, it's, at the end of the day, it is the ability for people to make their own choices. Yeah. In a world of misinformation, bad education, and all sorts of stuff, I came up with this question, right? You think about this. If humanity was on its true path, there would be no biohackers.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
There would be no convention. This movement wouldn't be happening. But we are not on our true path, and people know there's a better way. People know there's something different. There's a different way to look after ourselves.
Yeah.
And for me, a lot of stuff I talk about, which I think ties in. I don't consider myself a biohacker per se, but I do believe in getting to the source code of humanity, of who we are. And a lot of the things I talk about is the fact of us really starting to embrace the fact that our ancestry, for a start, that primal coding, because regardless of however you look at life, there's no stronger driving force in each and every one of us than our survival blueprint. Our survival blueprint is so strong. That's the thing that's kept humanity alive, and it's the strongest driving force in each and every person on this planet. Yeah. Technology is flying past us at a massive rate of knots, but we are still of that primal coding. Evolution takes a long, long time, but we are programmed. It's like a computer. It comes with a standard program when it's first delivered, and that's what we have. Before we are programmed from an early age, we have that standard program, which is our survival blueprint. And that's the driving force in each and every one of us. So really everything I talk about is getting back and appreciating that, having empathy for that, and working with it as opposed to, it working against you.
Mm-hmm. When you talk about what you just said, having on our true path society and your blueprint, from what I've read, you had a very tough childhood. And how do you get back? Well, maybe not getting back, but how do you find that blueprint, that path where you started? Maybe it's good to give a little context about your youth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we'll start there and we'll move on to that because it's something. It's an ongoing project. But for me, I was 10 years old, and I heard the circus was in town. Got my brother and his best friend. We went down there, so excited. It was 1980. The circus was exciting back then. I don't know if it is anymore.
Yeah.
But it was. And we got down there, said, they were just setting up. We asked if we could have a look around. We went into the big top, nothing amazing there for me. But then I was drawn to the other side of the canvas where there was a split. You could just see the sunlight coming through the split of the canvas. And I was compelled. I was an inquisitive 10-year-old boy. And I found myself over there on my own, and I pulled the canvas to one side. The sun hit me straight in the eyes, blurred my vision. But when my vision cleared, I saw something in front of me that was far greater than the circus, and that was a baby chimp.
Wow.
Now, for me, that was amazing. I was brought up with cats and dogs, but for me to see a baby chimp, and I was also infatuated with a program I used to watch religiously. I'd watched it that day, and that was Tarzan. So for me to see that, it was a little piece of Hollywood. It was like amazing. That was Tarzan's sidekick, Cheetah. And I was compelled, I went up, moved cautiously towards this creature. And then before I knew it, I was over it. And there was a moment, it looked at me with these big, beautiful eyes. It was an incredible moment. I will never forget. And then it started to pick food off the floor and pass it to me. And it was feeding me. This thing's feeding me now. And I'm like this baby David Attenborough. Do you know who that is? Yeah, of course you do. Yeah, everyone knows who David Attenborough is. But I was like this baby David Attenborough in this moment. It was like incredible. I wasn't going to eat the food because that's disgusting, but I wasn't going to break the serenity of that moment. And I was just sliding the food over past my cheek, throwing it over my shoulder, taking it again, taking it. It was a moment that was timeless. Time stood still.
You felt calm.
Felt calm. It was like the serenity of the moment was incredible. And it was probably going on for maybe 30, I don't know, a short amount of time, but it seemed like a lifetime. Yeah. But then the serenity of that moment was broken. It was almost like, the ferocity of a fighter jet cutting through the sky, as I heard a roar that I can still hear to this day. And that was either mummy or daddy in the shadows behind that was not happy that I was there as a threat to its young. And the shadows underneath this trailer turned into what was clearly mummy or daddy, about a 50-kilogram. I didn't get a chance to weigh it, but it was big. And it was heading to me at Mach 10. And that was another moment for me where I just couldn't move. I was like a deer in the headlights. My feet were glued firm to the floor. Couldn't move. I was frozen. This thing is going crazy coming at me. And just at that moment, I thought I'd had enough courage just to move. This thing pounced through the air over the baby chimp in front of me. The blue sky turned to black as it hit me on the chest, pinned me to the floor, was basically on top of me. And then it started going about me. The first fist came down, knocked everything out of me. I had nothing left. And then fist after fist after fist. And it was like a drummer in a rock band. I was the drum.
Yeah.
And my life flashed in front of me. It didn't take long. I was 10. So, but in that moment, I knew I was going to die. Blood started flying around everywhere. It's obviously not the chimp's blood. It was my blood. And I could feel the flesh being torn from my arms. Now, in that moment, and everything's happening so quick, I knew I was going to die. But then something happened, something amazing. And that was I went somewhere I never knew existed. I found this inner strength, this inner power that, like I say, I never knew was there. I'd never been exposed to it. But it was that inner strength, that inner power that then made me react. I heard this voice that said, "It doesn't end today." And that was that moment that I retaliated. I managed to wrestle the chimp off enough to get my leg up or my knee up to my chest. I smashed it out as hard as possible into the chimp's chest, knocked it to the floor. That was my moment to escape. And I was scurrying across the floor as fast as possible. And then I looked up and realized I wasn't going fast enough. I'd ran out of energy, and this chimp was angrier than ever. And it was the scariest moment because it was coming at me now on its final attack. And just as it got to me, it was about an inch from my nose before the chain caught it. And if it wasn't for that chain, I wouldn't be here today. And that moment in my life, I've only really started to reflect on what I learned in that moment only by looking back on my life and the things that happened in my life, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not there as a 10-year-old going, I've learned this and that. It's just a horrendous thing that happened to me.
Yeah.
And what we do, I believe we've got this innate protection system that allows us to lock away the intimate trauma. And I believe that's a good thing because it helps us get through the short term, but you can't leave it. And that's what we do.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, I think, just where we're talking on trauma there, because I think it's really important because a lot of people go through traumatic events. You're trying to be the person you were before the trauma. You're not that person anymore. And the more you fight to be something you're not, the more frustrated and the more in conflict with yourself you're going to be. And that was really me. Yeah. But it taught me, there's positives and negatives for that, because that inner strength that I did find that day was the one thing that would get me through Special Forces selection. It's the one thing that I drew on when I went through some major mental health issues. And I got back. I came back from the clutches of suicide through my own motivation and energy to do so. And I believe it was that inner strength that I learned on that day, which has helped me a number of occasions throughout my life. Now, it also taught me something else, that regardless of what your situation is, we always have a choice. Always. Doesn't matter how bad it is. And even if you can't see the road out, and sometimes it looks like the path of least resistance is the only option, which can sometimes mean something like suicide. It's not the case. It's not the case. There is always an option, and you just have to keep on moving forward. You have to keep and have that visualization of where you want to be, and really just keep that focused. It's the dominant thought in your mind. The negative side of what happened to me there, and this is again on reflection, and a lot of these things I think about have only just become apparent in the last couple of years.
Really?
Like in the last week, I've come up with something new. And I think this is the amazing thing, because the more I learn about the mind, the older I get. And I'm always constantly discovering things, studying stuff and everything else. And it's helping me to unravel the past. And that unraveling of the past is then helping me with the future. So it's an incredible thing. And the thing is, a lot of people say, when something bad happens to them in their life, I just want to forget it. No, don't forget it. There's a lesson. And those things you should never forget. You've got to take, and there's a lot of people going through stuff. I make sure every event that I go through, that I always analyze it to make sure what have I learned from this experience? What was it there for? What did it teach me? The negative side of that was the fact that, and this is really, again, this is this year that I reflected on, this is the fact that what happened on that day, I was going to the most amazing place. I was so excited, so joyful, saw this creature that was like God to me. It was the most amazing thing ever. Then all of a sudden, smash, chaos reigned. And the whole thing just collapsed. And when I look at my life now, that's how I treated everything. All the good things that happened in my life, as soon as I did something good and it was in a good place and stability and everything else, I would get the grenade, pull out the pin.
So you sabotaged yourself?
Sabotaged everything.
Interesting.
Everything. My military career, everything, the whole lot. My relationships.
Did you sabotage your military career?
Yeah. And I was like, I just lived in conflict. I'll talk about this more, when I talk about what I did in 2019 when I went to Costa Rica, but because there's a really amazing message that I got from that. But that was, when I look back, it was, when I take it back, because the subconscious mind, you get programmed from 0 to 7 years. There's a reason the Jesuits teach their following, or have done for the last 400 years. Give me a boy until he is 7, I will show you the man. It's that first 7 years where you are on record. You don't have an analytical mind. So everything around you in your environment, you are taking in. And this is the thing. It's like, a lot of people say, how can we, really help our kids? And I'm like, be the example of what you want them to be, because they're learning from you all the time, especially in those first 7 years. And a lot of the time you think they're only a baby, they're only a kid, they don't understand. But it's like that when parents don't love each other and all this and arguing. And I've been there. I've been that parent, and you think they're not going to, but they're absorbing that.
Yeah.
And all of us as adults are working from those first 7 years. That's our program.
It makes sense, because they say they observe, they do not listen. But how do you rhyme that with the fact that I read that you do not remember a lot of things before your 10th age, right?
Yeah, I don't remember anything before I was 10.
Exactly. So,
but I don't need to, because I look at my life now and that's the programming I got. And some of it's positive, some of it's negative. But the thing is, it's like to try and rewrite that. And the point I was getting to there is the fact that I was 10. Okay. So I was past that 7 years record, but there's something else that can influence the subconscious mind. And that is a highly impactful emotional event. And what happens in that moment is when you have that highly impactful emotional event, and that can be a good thing as well. That can be the fact you get married to the person you've loved forever, or whatever it is. Or it could be something terrible that's happened. Your brain takes a snapshot, and that then becomes your long-term memory, because it adds that snapshot with an emotion, and that becomes your long-term memory.
Yeah.
So really, that for me was the fact that I'd done that program to 7 years, but then that highly emotional, impactful thing at 10 years old, that would be then the blueprint of everything. And I don't know, maybe someone would tear that apart and say, well, that's not right. I truly believe. My perspective, that it just makes sense to me, because I did some amazing things and I just ruined everything. And I'm not just talking, my relationships with various girlfriends and stuff, everything, and I've talked to other lads, and then, I then went into the military, into the special forces, and went to probably the worst place, because they train you to be a comfort in chaos.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Their job is to train you to be a comfort. So they really just exploited what was already going on for me. So really the war started for me when I left.
Wow, that's beautifully said.
Yeah.
What are some what is the biggest impact on being in the military for you?
The biggest impact for me, to be quite honest, at 14 years old, it's quite interesting, because at 10 years old, the chimp happened. At 10 years old, I saw on television the SAS storm the Iranian embassy. Big year for me. And that, and the chimp, or more so the Iranian embassy, was the one thing that planted the seed in my head. I saw that and I was like, oh my God, I wanted that.
What was it that attracted you to it?
It was, I don't know, it was just, I just saw these men in black just storming this building, and like they were, and I can remember Margaret Thatcher at the time. She was the Prime Minister of the UK at the time. It was incredible, because usually when you do something like that, they will actually cover the front of the building so that no one can see. But she actually said, I don't want any covers going up on that building, because I want the world to see how good our SAS are.
Powerful.
And, it was powerful because it got my attention.
Yeah.
For sure. And that would have a ripple effect, later on through my life. But really the point I'm getting to is the fact I then came up with this dream and this vision.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really about joining the special forces, because I just thought that was unachievable. I just knew that these guys, in my head, these guys were carved from marble on another planet and brought to Earth. They were these super gods.
Yeah.
And for me, I was like, I wanted to join the military. I was like, what's the hardest military? I found out, and some people could argue this, but the Royal Marine Commandos, that was the hardest, sort of infantry soldiers out there. So I wanted to be part of that, and that was me. But I joined, I got in when I was 18 years old. And I was so disappointed. And I really do believe, because I had that dream since 14, I built such an image in my head of the perception, and this is the thing, perception and reality is so far removed.
It could only disappoint in
reality.
reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the one thing that then pushed me for special forces, because I was like, this is rubbish. This is not, this is not what I joined for.
Yeah.
And I think that's still that in the back of my mind, in the subconscious, was that a vision of that building that day, and that I saw on TV. So I then kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and then got into the special forces, which was the drama in itself. It's like, it's interesting when I look back. I mean, I always say this, look, hindsight is a wonderful thing, but it didn't win any wars. It's good for reflection, but it didn't win any wars. You can't change the past, but you can also, you can use it as a roadmap for the future. But for me, it's like, I then got into the special forces, and the problems I had getting into the special forces was quite insane. And when I look back now and I understand about the universe and everything else, it was telling me it wasn't the right path for me.
That's an interesting insight.
Yeah.
We'll definitely get into that later.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot around this, but it's very interesting, because I do believe, like, in our lives, we have a purpose. The thing is, for me, like at 18 years old, that wasn't even in my vocab. It's like, I didn't even know what that meant.
Were you in some way already aware of some stuff, or was it totally tunnel vision? Performing is a big word, but yeah, I had no real. Let's say that I was kind of brought up around a bit of alternative thinking. My auntie would go to psychics and stuff like that. I actually went as well, which was really interesting, actually, because me and my brother went. Only young. Can't remember. It must have been 13, 14, or maybe 15. I don't know. And it was interesting because they actually said that you were spending a lot of time in the Middle East. At 15, I had obviously no idea what that was. And they said about my brother, they could see him behind the controls of an aircraft. He's a helicopter pilot. Wow.
So, I mean, that side of it for me, I definitely wasn't a skeptic, but I didn't really believe how in depth and how powerful, at the end of the day, the way I am now, and I strongly believe this, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. So, that definitely was not in my language back then. And certainly if you'd have said that in front of the lads,
no, that wouldn't work.
God, I'd have lasted 5 minutes. So really the point was that, like, the biggest thing for me with the military is the fact it was almost like once I'd done it, I wasn't challenged anymore. It was almost like a tick box. It was like, I've done that now. And it was almost like I love the competition. I love beating other people, and I don't think that's a great thing. But I just love that thrive of competition, being on selection.
You still have that?
No,
okay.
not anymore. No. Yeah, a lot of that's ego, isn't it? And that subdues the older you get. Thank God. But yeah, it was an interesting time for me, because as crazy as the Special Forces is, the safest time in my life when I was in the Special Forces.
Was it?
Yeah.
Safe in what
safe
way?
In the respect that I had people around me to keep me in check. Do you know what I mean? It's like the mayhem for me was when I was left to my own devices. Like, leading up to that, I obviously had my family around me, but still I pushed the boundaries there big time.
Yeah.
But then when I left, I was under my own
supervision.
And that was not a good.
That's when the war started.
That's when the war started. But the thing is, again, with this, I've analysed this time and time again. It's the fact that I, as a kid, from that young age, 10 years old, and I know I was very different. I came from a decent family. We weren't super wealthy, but we weren't poor. It's like we sort of middle of the road family. And I know I'm very different to my brother and sister, and I put it down to that experience as a kid. And I just went off the rails, absolutely went off the rails. And I was looking for war everywhere I could find it. So that's why it was a natural thing for me to join the military. And all this time in my life, I wanted to go to war. And it was like, when I first and that has definitely gone now. When I first joined the Royal Marines, I realized I came back from Iraq, Operation Desert Storm, and I realized there wasn't going to be, I wanted to be there all the time. I wanted to be doing that all the time, back in Iraq, back in a war zone, wherever it was.
Yeah.
I know I wasn't going to get that. And that's what pushed me to go for the Special Forces. I went to the Special Forces, and to be quite honest as well, it wasn't around the time where it was like massively active. You know, the recent times that they are so active now because of current events, and it wasn't massively active. So again, I was so disappointed with that. You know, we did odd jobs, came in now and then and stuff. We did some great stuff, but it wasn't enough.
No.
And then that would go on for years and years afterwards. You know, I found myself back in a war zone afterwards as a contractor. You know, back there again. And then it took me some time to realize, until I crashed and burned and then started thinking about suicide, I realized the war wasn't out there.
It was inside.
It was inside. And this is where humanity's got it all wrong, because we think that the key to changing everything in our life, the key to happiness, the key to everything is external.
Yeah.
And I now understand, and it's just, even if you are a skeptic, you've got to appreciate this, that you can't change anything on your external world until you change the energy of who you are. You know, it's like relationships, because that's generic. Everyone understands that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like saying, well, I'm going to, you know, this relationship's a load of rubbish. I'm going to ditch that one and get a new one. And then all that happens, these people go to another relationship, and you got the honeymoon period, couple of weeks, month, maybe.
Same pattern.
And then before you know it, same pattern.
Yeah.
And then the same old baggage comes along, and you end up in the same situation. It's the same with a new job. It's the same with people like, I want to start a business, or they go and get a loan, you know. But if you don't change who you are from the core of who you are, nothing out there changes. And it's so, you know, and that for me was, you know, when I started thinking about suicide and I was like really pushed into that corner, I was on the back end of some absolute not bizarre, but absolute destructive behavior, abuse. I call it abuse. You know, drugs, drink, alcohol. And it was starting to think about suicide, and it pushed me into a corner, because I was like, I had nowhere else to turn. It was like, I was like I started thinking, I never attempted suicide. But the fact I was there, it was like the fact I'm thinking about it on a regular basis, you know, it was like my head went, what are you doing? You know, you're thinking about this too much. And the more we think about, you know what I mean, the bigger it becomes.
Yeah, definitely. When you talk about suicide, of course, and a pivotal moment afterwards, what I find so interesting is, even in my life or people around me, you see them going through a phase of maybe it is suffering, but what is it in that phase that it turns around at one point? Because it can take a long time for a lot of people, including myself, for some things. And I find it so interesting that it takes an experience to get out of that pattern. Yeah. Because I could have told you at that moment you should behave differently, but you wouldn't change. No. Right?
No.
All of the people in the world could have told you. Yeah. And including me, to my behavior. But what is it that we cannot get out of that during those periods in our lives?
The fact of the matter is, this is where that programming comes in, because we are 95% of that program. We've only got 5% of our creative mind at any time. So you understand that, like, this is, you know, for me, I was in that repeat habit loop. And this is why I spoke to you before we started this podcast about the survival blueprint. Now, the survival blueprint is the strongest driving force in each and any one of us on this planet. Same with any species or organism on this planet. You know, that you try and kill bacteria.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not just a case of, you know, it's just eradicate it. It pops up, you know, it's drive for survival. And we're the same. We're exactly the same. It's the same with the plant, you know.
Yeah.
Anything. Now, there's a few principles around that survival blueprint. And this is the fact that our brains were built for survival, not success. Not how many followers you've got on social media, not the house you've got, not the girlfriend you've got, not how much money you've got in the bank. It's your desire for survival. And with that, and I sat there studying this stuff because I just could not understand. So I've got these problems. I keep doing this behavior. So just stop. It's so easy, isn't it? Just stop.
Yeah.
I mean, if you went to someone, they go, A plus B equals C, do C.
Quite easy.
But it's not. Just because it's simple doesn't make it easy, because we are caught in this repeat habit loop.
Mm-hmm.
And that basically means that when it comes to survival, your mind wants to do what it did yesterday and the day before that and the day before that, because as far as your mind is concerned, it's kept you alive until today. It doesn't care if it's a good situation or a bad situation. It wants to keep you in a repeat habit loop. It wants to go where it's familiar.
Yeah.
So if you built up habits over a period of time, and the facts of me drinking, I didn't have a drinking problem. I had a problem that caused me to drink. And that's the bottom line, and what we do as kids, when you first start drinking, you drink because you're trying to mask something.
Yeah.
For me, I was renting a personality.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's what we do as kids. You go out to meet girls. God, I need a drink.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's and then throughout my life, every interaction with a girl was surrounded by drink. Every like intimacy, everything, it had to be drunk.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so corrosive. But you don't have a drinking problem. You have a problem that is causing you to drink.
Yeah.
But that pattern of behavior, over a period of time, the third thing that influences the subconscious mind is practice repeat. So if you're doing a habit, it's like drinking, going out, need a drink, meeting someone else, mates, need a drink. If you're doing that becomes part of your behavior. So at the end of the day, we can think in our frontal cortex, right, I'm going to change, this needs to stop, but that's only 5%. And you can have that sort of motivation to change, but your brain gets tired, and before you know it, the 95% is taken over and becomes, you are then running the program again.
Yeah.
So really, when it comes to that blueprint, that survival blueprint, it's just appreciating that habit loop. This is why my business is called Breakpoint. And my first breakpoint was the chimp. Mm-hmm. And that was stepping into the short-term discomfort for long-term gain. And I believe, and that to me was, retaliating to a chimp at 10 years old.
Yeah.
You'd have asked me days before, you're going to have a fight with the chimp. I'd have run for the hills, kept on running. It's stepping into the short-term discomfort. And this is what we have to do. We have to embrace that discomfort and understand that providing we keep moving forward and keep pushing towards the goal, understanding it's going to be uncomfortable, we're not going to like it, the brain's going to be resistant to change, that pain, that discomfort will become temporary. But the place you're going to has to be motivational enough. You have to be passionate about it, and it has to have a strong why. And if you haven't got a strong why, it's not going to put up with the discomfort of change.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So if you have a strong why, then the how, and we've heard everyone, a lot of motivational stuff out there, the how becomes easy.
Yeah.
But it's just really defining what that why is and making sure that it's about you and it's not there just to impress the audience. A lot of people are doing stuff and they're compromising their own sort of mental health and everything else just to please the audience. And, this is a big reflection of mine when I actually did ayahuasca, that how much time and energy we put into pleasing the audience. This was a massive reflection for me, especially as that period I'd just broken into this sort of celebrity status where, and I was reflecting on how much energy we put into creating this persona of someone to please the audience.
Well, I can imagine having such a childhood and also been in the military and then gaining celebrity status that could magnify all the good and the bad things, right? All the damages, right? In yourself. I can imagine that must be very difficult.
Yeah.
So you came at a point where you wanted to commit suicide. Of course, I read your book, but what was in the end the breakpoint where you thought this is not it?
Well, for me, it was like, I do hear this voice, and that's your, that is the real you. And that real you, I heard that voice when I was a kid saying it doesn't end today. I've heard that voice a few times, when you really are pushed into a corner, when your ego is nowhere to be seen, and you really hear the voice from within. And that voice for me was like, when I started thinking about it, I'm like, what are you talking about? And I heard again, it doesn't end like this. There's something more for you. I kept hearing that. There's something more for you. This is not how the story ends. And that was, for me, it's like, that was the turning point, because I went, you know what, you're right. And I knew, I could see how destructive my patterns had become. And I knew, it's just a case, I need to change it up, because I was in conflict. It wasn't like, at one point I used to go out and enjoy it, but I got to the point, it was every time I drank it, I was in conflict. I used to go out, I was thinking about that today, because it's quite interesting, right? Because I used to be one of these people, but I got to the airport in the UK today, and I got in for 4:30 in the morning, and I got into the airport, and it's just full of people with pints of lager at 4:30 in the morning. And it's funny, because I used to be one. I'd be the first there, go, let's go beer, on holiday. And I just looked, and I thought, this is terrible. Everyone.
Yeah.
Everywhere I looked, everyone had a pint of lager or a drink or whatever. And I was just thinking, when you go on holiday, it's like, that's your free will, isn't it? So you act how you would act if you have no commitments, because when you're on holiday, you don't have commitments. So is this what the general population look to do when they've got nothing else that has a priority over their lives? And it's quite concerning. It's really concerning, that the amount of alcohol abuse, but that's just part of the programming.
Yeah.
So really for me, going back to the point, I heard that voice, it doesn't end like this. And it was at that point I said, right, this has to stop. And this was a break point for me. This is where I said, I am sick and tired of me being a repeat pattern of the past. I was just repeating behaviors from the past. And this again is what humanity is trapped in. We're using the past as the blueprint for the future. And when you're doing that, because you've got nothing bigger that's pulling you through, your life becomes very dull. It's not challenging at all. And you are just a carbon copy of yesterday.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's where we are. And that really, I feel, when it comes, I don't feel, I know that the way humanity is, we are being pulled into this. They want us to live in that survival instinct. Now, when you're in that survival instinct, let me tell you, a few things happen. I know this, obviously, from being attacked at 10 by a chimp, but a load of stuff happens physiologically to the body.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, like your blood goes away from all the vital organs and goes to the limbs where it's needed, because that's what, you need to escape. Cortisol enters the system, and that's your fight or flight response. The blood goes from the forebrain to the back of the brain so that you lack creative thought and you follow instinct. Now, I ask a lot of people, that's how you're walking around each and every day.
Yeah.
You know what? When you see a wildlife program, you see the gazelle, right? It's there, and it's in the paddock, not paddock or whatever, in the open, and it's like grazing, beautiful hot day, and the lion's stalking up. Then the gazelle gets a sniff. Gazelle goes boom off, doesn't it? Mach 10, lion's worn out, stops chasing. Then just over the top of the hill, the gazelle's there just eating away again. It's taken its stress response, it's used it in that time it's needed, and then switched it off. Humans can't do that.
That's the point.
We hold that stress response by thought alone. We can switch off, because our mind is so complex. We can turn on that stress response just by thought alone. Now, we've got nothing chasing us like saber-tooth tiger or anything like that anymore, but we have got so many different threats, or what we perceive as threats, and that's them being shoved down our throats from the media, from newspapers, everything, because there's two things that will grab our attention when it comes to our survival instinct: fear and sex.
Yeah.
They're the two things that will dominate over anything that you're doing. Fear will grab your attention. Sex will grab your attention. So creation and death. And we are the only organism on this planet that knows it's going to die. Yeah. And that is used against us.
Yeah, that's definitely used against us. Before we dive into how you manage all this, we just talked about, I was wondering, because you talked about your voice back then when you were 10 and later on, how I always see it. I'm curious if you feel the same. I'm sure you do, because we both did ayahuasca.
Yeah.
So how I see it is, you have certain thoughts, and beneath that is your consciousness, of however you want to call it, right? And how do you manage in this society to, and more specific at that breakpoint, how do you manage to reach that lower voice? Because I remember when you spoke about that voice, I remember the shift in my consciousness when I did ayahuasca is, of course, I recognized my thoughts.
Yeah.
But after that ceremony, I felt a different voice.
Yeah.
Like something was whispering, and I felt the difference between a thought and that other voice.
Yeah.
But I also have days that I cannot reach that voice because I'm too much in my thoughts, like that fight or flight response. How do you reach in that breaking point? How do you reach that actual voice you have to listen to?
Yeah, I think that is the battle, because we've got so much going on around us. And I think, do you agree with this, that like when you come out of the ayahuasca experience, you feel extremely empowered. It's obviously incredible. But as soon as you then move back into society, that gets diluted.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like closing up.
Like the doors closing. Yeah. Doors closing. And I think really at the end of the day, it's not like I sit here like some kind of, I haven't got all the answers, but, I hear a lot of stuff about, that you shouldn't be having this constant voice. I do have the constant voice, but apparently, I don't know how true or if people believe, but the what we should be striving for is no voice. And we should be, I think at the end, it should be, we're speaking from the heart, everything we want to do, but easier said than done again, because you've got so much going on, and society wants us to be consumed. It wants us to be scared. It wants us to be in fear, because that's how we can be controlled. People in fear, in a state of stress, and no organism can live in a state of emergency for an extended period of time without getting some level of dis-ease within the body. That's the fact. So I believe it's intentional. Some people might disagree. I believe it's intentional because they don't want us living too long, et cetera, and they want us to, want, and people being ill health creates revenue and stuff like that. We won't go down that rabbit hole though. But the thing is, at the end of the day, the answer to that question is the fact that we really need to we are constantly fearing about the future and regretting the past, and we rarely just sit in the moment and just allow to be us in that moment, or allow to be what is in that moment. And it's really, this takes a lot of practice, and every now and then, I can hear myself saying, just center. I think a lot of the breath as well, the breath work, there's so many advances and so much recognition towards breath. And I just think it's common sense, isn't it? This is a hidden art of that a lot of people don't know how to do properly. And this again is like when you get stressed, cortisol starts to rise. The reason that happens is you're going to a stressful situation, your breathing becomes erratic, and that basically is switching on your parasympathetic nervous system, and it's putting you into a fight, flight, or freeze. Now, some people are walking around like that, and that's only influencing a lot of people. You just got to turn your phone on in the morning, the first thing to come on news app. Just as so, the one thing I'll say about that is, first of all, don't allow that to happen. I don't buy a newspaper. I don't watch the news. I'd have to be dead to not know what's going on in this world. You would, wouldn't you? I mean, you can see it. You've got all the social media channels and everything. Yeah. But the thing is, I choose not to have it belt fed down my throat on a constant basis. You know what I mean? So, I'm not allowing that distraction for a start. And really, at the end of the day, me and my wife, we're business partners as well. We've got the same, we speak the same, we have long in-depth conversations, which is amazing. And it's just about really the amount of time you spend worrying. It's like, and women, not all women, but I know certainly my wife, she panics about money and this, that, and the other. And she keeps saying, all this time that we've been together and, worrying about where's the next money going, and it's always all right. It's always just, why do we worry?
Yeah.
But that's just a natural way. But it's really understanding that, at the end of the day, you find that if you sat and wrote down all the things you're worrying about, you can't control them. So what's worth focusing on them? It's just wasting your bandwidth.
Yeah.
So really, if it's a topic or something like that you're constantly worried about, write down all the things that are causing you anxiety, cross off all the things that you can't control, focus on the 1 to 2 things that you can control, and prioritize. Yeah. But it's just switching off that inner dialogue. I actually missed, I got distracted. I usually do this, but when we talked about that change for me, when I heard that voice about it doesn't happen, the suicidal thoughts and everything else, I really realized in that moment that the more we focus on anything, the bigger it becomes. And for me, when I was in that really hateful stage, I hated everyone. I hated my environment. I hated my history. I have regretted my past massively. So as far back as the chimp, to the military, to my girlfriends, everything. But the worst of all, I hated myself. I started thinking, well, how come I hate it so much, but I keep getting more of it? I thought, well, I'm always looking at the opposite, because there is always an opposite to everything. There's, you won't feel good if there was bad, and there's no bad, and blah, blah, blah. So I just thought in that moment, well, I seem to be doing this a lot and getting more of it. So what's the opposite of what I'm doing? So I started to think, okay, who do I want to be? What does that person look like? Okay, now I had that vision in my head of someone, I had this vision in my head of this person. What does it feel like to be that person? Added emotion to that. And I allowed that become my dominant strain of thought. So whenever I started hating myself and everything, I would focus on that. I started meditation and things like that. I locked myself away in a house for 3 months to change the blueprint of who I was, which was absolutely, I wrote my second book on that called Battle Ready. But really, that I actually came up with my own meditation. My own meditation was, I used to walk downstairs. I had a few meditations. And Vishamakani was the 6-phase meditation, which was brilliant. I was new to it. I didn't even know if it worked, but I was prepared to give anything a go, because I couldn't stand who I was. I couldn't stand who I was. So, I had this meditation, and I would visualize going down the staircase, getting into it, through my breathing and everything. I would open the door and I would meet me, but I'd meet me in 6 months. Do you know what I mean? And I would look at me, and I'd be like, I could see he had the expensive watch. He looked like he'd been working out. He looked good. His skin looked good. His eyes looked clear. And I would talk to that person, and I used to do that every day. And I came up with that. And then, so I made that my dominant thought, because I just thought the more we focus on anything, the bigger it becomes. Yeah. The more you focus on what you hate, stand by, you get more.
100%, yes.
Yeah. So, and it's just, people can't understand, they sit there and go, I hate my job. I really wish I had a new job. If you've got that attitude, you are going to keep, even if you move from that job, you'll have the same feelings in the next job.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, so anyway, I wanted to address that, because I've not actually answered that question, because I got distracted a bit.
Oh, well, it's a good answer, definitely. So when talking about personal leadership, how we started this podcast, you seem very open-minded. You take accountability for your own character, for your own mistakes, quote unquote. That taking control, and that's visualizing, what you also do very often. Do you still do that very often?
Yeah, I think we all do. You know what I mean? Some people say, "Oh, have you seen that film, the movie The Secret?" And I go, "Yeah." And do you believe in the power of law of attraction? I'm like, it's working for everyone.
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh, some people do and some people don't. It's working for everyone.
Exactly.
So you become what you think about, and that is absolute fact. I mean, I'm just starting to get onto the whole epigenetics, which is amazing. It's now, this study's been around since back in the 70s. This information, but they don't want us to know this, do they?
It's crazy, isn't it?
And this is the thing. It's like, like I'm hearing stuff like, and this is through like Dr. Bruce Lipton, Dr. Joe Dispenza. Absolutely incredible. It's like people believe that genes cause cancer. They don't. They don't cause cancer.
It's
It's
a
not.
beautiful insight, right?
Yeah, he said, and really, it's the fact epi means above.
Mm-hmm.
It's above the gene. So basically, this means that we've got this in our head that we are our genes, of our family history and everything else. If you go see a doctor and have you got any history of cancer in your family, blah blah blah, and you imagine that fear, and people think that if my auntie died of cancer, I'm going to die of cancer. Cancer.
And
then they get cancer.
Yeah.
And they think it's because of genetic reasons. And it's not because of genetic reasons. It's because your environment, you have signaled the gene through your thoughts. And, again, when it comes to epigenetics, it's like, and I'm by no means any expert, but there's some things that stand out to me massively on this. It's such an amazing study that when you come up with a hold of vision in your head, your brain produces complementary chemistry and base into your blood, which then creates the genes. Then the genes create the proteins. I mean, have we ever been taught that?
It's insane, right?
Have we been taught that? We've been taught the opposite of that.
Yeah. You have your DNA and
your DNA and this, that, and the other, and blah, blah, blah. And, I think it was something like breast cancer. It was like only 50% of the women with the breast cancer gene. I don't know the end of that story, so we're not going to include that. But there was something about breast cancer, and it was nothing to do with the fact that it was genetic. So
it is insane. What is the saying? DNA is the gun, and epigenetics fire the gun.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Sounds right to me.
Yeah, well, especially with your history. Well, we shouldn't fire the gun, and I think having that insight gives us even more power.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely an insight that should be shared more often.
It's 50% of the women with the breast cancer gene didn't get cancer.
Yeah.
That was it.
Sense.
It was, and all these things, all these factual things. And that's why, I think it's so important that we start to look and reflect and start to educate ourselves.
Yeah.
We need to unlearn what we've been taught. We need to deprogram and learn a new program. And I think a lot of time, we're encouraged to scroll on our phones. We're encouraged to listen to the radio. We're in our cars when there's always something to distract us. You know what I mean? The last thing that people want us to do is start, sitting with ourselves in a moment and analyzing our own thoughts.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? But that awareness of your thoughts, thinking about the things you think about is a massive step.
100%. I think that's the most important first step to take.
Yeah.
But when what you say about reprogramming, that there has to be a moment before you start realizing that you have to reprogram yourself, right? Because when I talk to people who are not into, let's say, biohacking, but just taking care of their own health, they have the opinion that this is just because my family has it, or my family is poor, so no, you cannot make that amount of money, or you cannot reach that amount of success.
Yeah,
and I find it so interesting that you took control of that paradigm. Yeah, and you switched it, and you went to a different path than you were given at birth.
Well, let me tell you what happened to me. If I can do this in a short space of time, because I had something that happened to me that really, I laugh at myself. Right, I in my head I have this vision of the universe. There's a little control center up there, and there's people up there controlling us, and and I always think like they're up there getting frustrated with me and saying, "Oh, we need to give him a lesson so he understands how this all works." And I was in Iraq, and I went back as a contractor, and I was working for ABC News, and it was my job to protect the news crews. I had a 6-man team and everything else. And one day I had to go and collect 12 new members of staff because they were having a turnaround. So I had to basically get a team together to go from Baghdad to Jordan to go and do the pickup. Now, it was around the time when the Americans had sort of moved in and liberated. Or was it invaded? They don't know the difference.
Depends on who tells the story.
Yeah, it depends on who's the journalist. But basically, so it was kind of the statue came down in Firdos Square of Saddam Hussein, and it was like this misconception that everything was going to be safe and blah, blah, blah. We knew, we're former special forces guys on the ground, knew that the drums were beating a different sound. We knew it was the calm before the storm, and we knew that they were looking to downsize the team because we were expensive. And the thing is, with security people, they pay you for nothing to happen. You know what I mean? It's like, it's quite an odd, but your value is only appreciated when you're tested. So really they were looking to offload us, and I was like thinking, not just because I was earning decent money for once, but I knew there'd be consequences. So I wanted to be on that team. They only said we could take 2 people looking after 12. That is the wrong ratio, big time. It should be at least the other way around. But you're not going to argue when the cash is being paid and everything else. So I ended up going because I wanted to look the new guy coming in, look him in the eye and tell him he was making a mistake. And anyway, so I put myself down for the job, took one other. And that day, going to pick him up, I was like thinking, what am I going to say to him? How can I convince him? Especially when there's money in the mix as well. It's like people just think, oh, you just want, you're just doing this for the money. It's rubbish about anything else. But so I'm thinking, what are those words? And I couldn't think of what the words were. Please is not going to work. So me being creative, and I know I'm creative because I've done psychometric reports that suggest I'm very creative anyway, but I started thinking we all think in pictures, but I started thinking in scenarios, and I'm driving down the road and I'm thinking the next day when we're going past this very sort of hostile area called Ramadi and Fallujah, we're coming back down here tomorrow. And I came up with this whole visualization in my head about what was going to happen the next day on this road. And I came up with this, we're going to get attacked. And I was loving it. You know what I mean? I came up with it. Honestly, I put myself in that moment like it was happening. I could smell the cordite from the bullets. I could hear the bangs. I could taste the air. I could taste it in my spit. Everything, the time, everything. I played it all out how we would get attacked. When we're coming back the other way, attacked at speed in the vehicles, all this and that, there. And I was thinking, that'll happen. And then we'll get back to Baghdad. There'll be a big hero's welcome. As we go through the compound, there'll be champagne drank. And when I was drinking the champagne, I was feeling the bubbles. I was there. I was putting myself right there, and I was shaking the hands. I could feel the skin of someone else. And then we would sign the contract for another day and everything would be fine. We saved the day and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I was doing that and I had a long time to do it because I had 12 hours in the car. Anyway, cut a long story short, the next day on the way back, that attack happened. The very exact attack happened. And as it's going down and the guns are firing and the smell of the cordite and the fact we're actually in the very location that I had predicted.
It was exactly the same.
It was deja vu. It was the second time I'd done it. The second time I'd done it.
Did that help you in that moment?
No. It freaked me out.
Oh, really?
It freaked me out big time. Yeah, because it's like, that thing happened. And it was a horrible thing. Mm-hmm. It's like the day before I was like, oh, that'd be great. When it actually happened, it was the first time I'd actually been in an attack where I wasn't surrounded by special forces guys. I wasn't surrounded by big, support elements in the sky. And it was horrible. It was horrible. But as I'm driving away from that after it happened, I'm just like freaking out because I'm thinking, my God, I can't believe that has just happened. It's just like, and then so I kind of calmed down. And then the wind is coming through the window at 130 k's an hour because we blasted the windows out. And then just to make it worse, we got back to the compound and there was the hero's welcome. Pulled up the car. And as I looked up, I got out of the car. I can remember opening the door and I heard all this light change hitting a hard marble floor. And it was the bullets, all the empty shell cases and the glass falling on the floor. And as I got out of the car, looked up, a glass of champagne.
Just like you imagined.
Just like I imagined. And I got the champagne, I got the glass, I felt the bubbles. And then we got taken into the office where we signed the contract.
That's insane.
For another 2 years. And it's like, although nothing changed for me in that moment, because I then got extremely hooked on drinking and stuff like that. And I didn't actually use that then. It triggered something. And I started to think, maybe. And that's, you know, high emotional impact that happened that day. And that sowed a seed about the power of visualization, positive thought, manifestation, everything, you know. And that is something that then went into that when I was suffering with mental health issues, when I was thinking about suicide. I drew from that experience to then create the template of who I wanted to be.
Wow.
So it was that thing in Iraq that happened that flicked me onto this world.
Exactly. Wow. I'm glad you got attacked.
So am I. But the thing is, I don't think about getting attacked anymore.
I can imagine.
I think about good stuff, all happy stuff. But it 100% works, you know. And I could tell people, you know, some people you will never change. They'll never, you know, they just think they're lumps of meat and gravy, eat, sleep, work, repeat, and that's it.
Yeah.
They don't understand the power of who we are, the potential of who we are. And you know, I could tell people stuff the way they just laugh and go, "You're full of shit," and it's not. You know, there's things. You know, when I come up about the TV show, that was a visualization.
Yeah,
that was a visualization. It wasn't a TV show. I have that. I'll tell you that. But the thing is, I came up with my head because I locked myself away for 3 months when I got back to the UK with the idea I wanted to start this business Breakpoint. I knew I needed to change who I was because broken people break people. So I needed to make sure I was of the most robust foundation there could be. So that's why I put myself into that house for 3 months. And every day I visualized about having this business that would basically take people from the corporate world, put them through like a mock SAS type selection where we could really get past the ego and really get to them as people, to really get them to grow from the inside. So we had this kind of mock, you know, I thought about all these different scenarios about interrogation, putting them through like physical events and this, that, and the other. I also had another visualization along with that I'd speak to companies, I'd be on a stage, and I did the same thing. You know, I actually visualized as if I was there. You know, when I was on stage, I could see the crowd. I could feel the shirt on my back. I could feel the expensive watch on my arm. I could feel the shoes on my feet. I could hear, taste, touch, smell everything as if I was there. I did that every day in my meditation. And then 3 months later, when I absolutely just thought this stuff is, maybe that thing in Iraq was just a load of coincidence. Maybe it was a coincidence. And I shouted at the top of my voice. And it was like, just give me something. I wanted something to happen. Nothing was happening. Nothing happened. But then 2 days later, the phone rang. And that was my friend who was on the TV show with me.
Yeah.
He said, hey, you know that idea you've got for that business? Would you do it on TV?
Wow.
Now, you try telling me that visualization doesn't work.
That's quite a breakpoint.
That's quite a breakpoint. You know what I mean? And then what am I doing now? You know, that TV show's now been going for a long time, well, since 2015. I am constantly like, leading up to being here today, I've done 3 talks this week to corporate organizations. Everything I've visualized in that house is happening in my daily life.
Wow.
So for anyone to say that, you know what, a lot of people think about all the negative stuff that could happen. And that's why we're always looking for what could go wrong. And they're constantly thinking about negative stuff and what if and all this fear and everything else. And then they're the ones that sit there every year and go, I can't believe this has happened to me. You know, I'm no different than last year.
Yeah.
You know, they think in the negative thoughts, and then they see someone like me say, well, our lives are a product of our imagination. They just,
yeah, because
you're doing it.
Yeah, it's just in the wrong way.
Yeah.
I think that is really valuable indeed. But it feels a bit. People want more tangible proof. But yeah, like you said, you're doing it right now.
Yeah, but the thing is, as well with this, and this is why it's important for me. You know, this is why I've started taking an interest in epigenetics and everything else, because I believe that you've got to be able to, and this is why I like Bruce Lipton. This is why I like Joe Dispenza, because they back the science they back the spirituality with science.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this is I came up with this thing because I was in the SBS. I'm like, science-backed spirituality.
It's a good one.
Yeah. So it's like, but I really think that even this, I want to be able to speak on such a level to people that I can then tell them, well, this is the science. You know, it's like, you know, I was listening to something last week, and there's the constructive interference, which is a law in science. You know, it's a scientific law, and that means when two wavelengths of equal bandwidth are together, they double in strength. And then also telling people that we are energy and we emit a frequency. You know, that's even too much for people to understand. Well, I think that's where it has to start. Yeah. That's where it has to start. Do you realize that we are energetic? We are producing energy. And I think that's really where the conversation has to start, and backing that with science. Because once you understand that happens, and everything in this world is vibrating. Everything, you know, it's like some structures, though, like a hard structure is vibrating at a stable rate. And that's why it's hard. And, you know, as our vibration fluctuates, and that then gives off a frequency, and that frequency carries information. You know what? Our phones, people understand their phone. If people know their phone, their operating system, more than they know their own operating system.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's like, sometimes to try and explain that, I'm just like, do you understand that when you like make a phone call on this, it taps into a frequency that then meets there's so many frequencies out there, but then it will tap into the very one that you want to connect with, and you can speak to someone all over the world. Yeah. It's great, isn't it? Well, we're no different.
No,
it's just that's what. No, you're kidding. We're no different. That technology, we got that organically.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And this is why a lot of it. And then you say to people, you know, it's like, I do this all the time. I actually make a point doing it now. It's like I'll sit there and think about my mum. You know what I mean? I can, not all the time, but then she'll either call me, or I'll make a phone call and she'll be like, oh, I was just about to call you.
I was just thinking of you.
Yeah, I was just thinking of you. And I'm like, that it worked. But that is even too bigger. Hurdle for some people to get across. They just don't understand, you know, and you can't blame them, because, you know, that we haven't been educated the right way. We've been programmed to not believe of our own true potential and power and everything else.
I agree. I definitely agree. And what I find interesting in how you approach, how I call it personal leadership, I don't know how you call it, but taking control of your life. I'm sure that you heard of the term masculinity, femininity when you did ayahuasca.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you use those kind of words or you do you?
No, not really. No.
Well, in my ceremony, I did. I followed.
Where did you go?
Here in the Netherlands.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. Somewhere in the south of the Netherlands.
Yeah. Was it a good place?
I wouldn't recommend it.
No.
I was not really in a safe place.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you've got to make sure that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But I didn't know.
No.
Because I thought, okay, I will do this on my own.
Yeah.
But you have to be carried a little.
Yeah, of course. You've got to, because at the end of the day, you have to surrender.
Exactly.
And that then really leaves you open to being extremely vulnerable, and you've got to be in a safe place for that.
Yeah, definitely. That is definitely something I overlook. But in those spiritual realms, they sometimes talk about masculinity and femininity, and I'm sure there are other terms for it as well. But
no, I know that. Yeah. I mean, they did exactly that. Is, you know, and the ayahuasca, it's the mother, which is feminine.
Exactly.
Yeah, the feminine.
So, what I find interesting in observing you, of course, in the preparation of this conversation, is the military is seen as very masculine, like discipline, hardship, rational thinking. And what I find interesting in for me, true leadership is also being able to surrender at times to your life, to emotions, to but I think that is a very overlooked approach. Like you said before, I'm happy to admit some kind of emotions or
Yeah.
anxieties. And how could we enforce more of that softer side
Yeah.
to enforce the stronger sides? I think it goes hand in hand.
Yeah. I think this again comes down to our you know what, they talk about toxic masculinity, right? I believe that the problem with, or what causes toxic masculinity, is the lack of masculinity and the education around it. So people are doing what they think is the perception of being a man, and they've got it all wrong. So they think it's all being hard and being macho and everything else, be able to fight toe to toe with someone else. And don't get me wrong, there's certain instances where that's a useful skill to have.
Valuable, yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think a lot of it is the fact, and I think about, various things, but this is one for me. I feel, and you can see this happening a lot in our society, division. There's been such a difference placed on that is a man and that is a woman, and a man should do this and a woman does this, and I think really those principles of what they state each gender should be have been misguided from the start anyway. At the end of the day, and then it's also not appreciating what a man and what a woman gives to this universe. I mean, at the end of the day, the women are givers of life, and there's nothing more powerful than that.
Definitely.
I mean, they obviously can't do it without us. So it's an equal relationship, but they are the givers of life. And I think really at the end of the day, it comes down to, I feel that there is a role for a man, and that is more so the protection, the provision for the family and for the feminine, for the female. And that the female is there to then provide, through giving life. But look how it's been contaminated. Look how that's been contaminated. I mean, the whole family value and everything has just been taken away. The values of a man and woman and what they represent. And I believe this as well is why there are a lot of mental health issues with men, because you're stripping away their purpose. They don't know where they sit anymore. They can't, there's nothing more purposeful than providing a safe environment for a woman and your family. There's nothing more powerful as a purpose than that, regardless of what year we're in. Doesn't matter how fast technology is flying past. Those values create more purpose than anything. Yeah. When you strip those away from any man, they will suffer. And that's what's happening now, isn't it?
Yeah.
And all this, and I'm all for women, if they want to go out and have careers and everything else, but it's always been stuffed down people's throats that, career, women, and the whole our roles and responsibilities have just been stripped away.
Yeah. I can
diluted and distorted.
No, I agree 100%. The times where I felt the most bad was the times where I went away from my purpose. Yeah. When I lost track. And that's when I fell off in depression or a dark place, to say the least. But I find it very interesting that you, especially with the traumatic events you suffered from, that you were willing and you had the guts to heal those softer sides as well.
I have to say though, listen, I did it the wrong way.
You did?
And, I did it the wrong way. And the reason I say that, I wouldn't say it's the wrong way because it worked for me. So I did my path. Yeah. But I'm there to inspire and help other people, and I would not suggest people do it the way I did it. And the reason I say that is because I came from a very alpha male world where it's like you can't show emotion, you can't, and if you did, just shut up, have a beer, and let's go on to the next thing. So I came out with that same kind of mentality and ethos, and it was like, I had I was always the party boy with a smile and everything else. It was all, that was my identity. But, it's a very different story a lot of the time when the doors are closed, and it's, and I look back now at the fact I was trying to be a man and I see myself as so weak that to me was real weakness, that I am putting on a brave face while there's a whole different story going on behind here. And I could have done something about it and could have got people to help. And I could have, you know, because really when you're in that state and you truly get tested, you are not going to be a man. You're just putting on a show for the perception of others. And it's just the, you know, I really think a man should be there to, as an alpha, you know, I'm big for the alpha. You know, we should protect, we should look after our family and everything else. But that doesn't mean that you don't show emotion. You know, that is just like so backward, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I find it very powerful that because you were in the military.
Yeah.
It's so big on the other side.
Yeah.
That you were willing to go on the other side as well.
They always said I was a bit different. They'd still say it. So,
most definitely. Well, what I experienced after ayahuasca.
Yeah.
For the people that didn't experience ayahuasca, indeed, it is like the mother energy. So, but it enhanced some, at least for me, a little bit more of the feminine side in me, like 2, 3, 4 weeks after the ceremony. And I was like, what is happening to me? You know, oversharing emotions and all that kind of stuff. But after that, closed up a little bit more. And I was like, is it diminishing the effect of the ayahuasca? But I think it's like 8 months ago right now. I feel like that oversharing had to happen in a few weeks after. And now it got more balanced again. So I healed a little bit of the feminine side to carry more of the masculine side.
Yeah.
And I got way more done. I got more purposeful.
Yeah.
And I think that is when I saw the true purpose of healing both sides.
Yeah.
One will carry the other.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one will empower the other.
Yeah, exactly.
Vice versa.
Yeah.
I mean, it's no different than positive and negative, is it? You know, at the end of it, it's the same principle.
100%.
And when I went through that ayahuasca experience, like the last thing I ever thought was going to happen was what happened. You know, because again, you know, talking about that trauma as a 10-year-old boy, I just thought, well, that happened a long time ago. That's not, you know, that's not relevant. And as you know, ayahuasca goes to where it's needed, not where you decide.
It's so scary.
I know. I think if I want to promote my friends to do it, I have to not tell them that bit. No, it goes wherever you want it. Just take it. Take it. If wherever you direct it, it will sort out. Don't you worry. Oh, that's all right.
Let's go.
Yeah, but for me, it was like, you know, and I can remember when I, you know, obviously started seeing all the geometry and everything, and then on this different plane, and then all these different doors that I could have gone down, you know, which were obviously all experiences, and there was one door that was kind of ajar. It was like I was being pulled to go down this, and then at the end of that corridor, I could see the chimp. Oh, sorry, I couldn't see the chimp. I could see the boy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I could see me. 10 years old, and I was like, oh, I don't want to go there, and it's like, but I had to, but you know, surrender. I finally got there, and I became the boy, you know, and it's like, and I was there and I was petrified because I knew what was going to happen. And whenever I remembered that attack, it was silent. There's no emotion
at that moment.
Yeah, well, whenever I've recalled it in my head, it's never had any emotion.
Oh, really?
No.
Because it was locked up, that emotion?
Yeah, because it was locked up. Because it was locked up. And, you know, I never heard the voices or anything or the noise. And so I went down and I became the boy. And it's, you know, I was there and the chimp was in front of me and everything. You know, and as you know from ayahuasca, this is real. It's like, this isn't real. You can't sit there and go, well, this is not real. It's real.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I saw the chimp and then I heard the roar. The roar that I've always heard, you know, I heard that roar again, and I looked up and I saw the chimp, you know, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to get attacked. And something really weird happened in that moment. I became the chimp.
No way.
Yeah. So I went straight into the chimp, and then I was looking at me as the 10-year-old boy, but I was the chimp, and it was so realistic because it was a hot summer's day and I'd been laid down the chimp had been laid down up and, resting underneath the truck. As I got up, I could feel the leaves falling from my fur. It was so realistic, and I could feel all the hair and everything on me. And I was like in the Maloka, as you know, it's the Maloka, and I was on a mattress.
Yeah.
And I was actually like, my fists were in the floor, I was crouched backwards like a chimp, and I was like roaring. And they would tell me the next day, Jesus Christ, you are. And I went, yeah, I know. It was like this. I was roaring. And then it was almost like this computer, like when you see Terminator.
Yeah. I
could see me, and it was going threat. It's like I was getting ready to attack as the chimp. Like bizarre. I thought, I'm going to attack me.
Myself, yeah.
But then I went back to the boy, and then all of a sudden I started thinking, compassion. This was it for me, compassion. And then I started thinking that I stepped into this enclosure.
Yeah.
He didn't come looking for me.
Wow.
And that mother was doing what any mother would do. It would do anything to protect its young. And then straight away in that moment, I then started thinking about all the females in my life. And I started thinking about my compassion for my wife. And I asked her all these demands to do this, that, and the other, and the business, and get angry with her. And I realized that regardless of what I ask her to do, and regardless of what she says, powered from her frontal cortex, deep within her subconscious, she will protect her son.
Yeah.
Far over anything that I'm going to ask her to do or whatever. That is her priority. So like learning compassion for that chimp, which was incredible, then spanned it all across all of my life. And to be more compassionate. That was the message, be more compassionate. And it also, another thing in that moment, it took me out of being the victim. And this is what we do as humans, it's like 90% of people in this planet are playing the victim card, and, they're allowing, if you're allowing anything from the outside world to or affect your emotions, you are a victim. That's fact. And that's what the majority of people do. And for the first time ever, it took me out of being a victim. It made me something bigger, a part of that scenario, not the focal point of it. Taught me compassion and everything. Then what would happen the next night? I thought, well, that's it. That's all done. It's all finished. Great. Where am I going tonight? It's got to be better. And the next night I went back and it was almost like I was going down that corridor, like dragging my chalkboard with my nails. I don't want to go because I know what was going to happen. Because the night before I'd avoided the attack. I'd not gone through it. And I was like,
wow.
So the next night, and then I went back into me and the attack happened. And I went through that emotional attack.
As yourself? As
myself, yeah. And I was like, I'd never heard the noises and anything before. And I was underneath that chimp and I was screaming for my mum. It was hideous. It was like, it wasn't nice at all because I could hear, I was screaming. And as that chimp's attacking me, I was so, and the emotions, I was just so terrified. So terrified. And then as that was happening, it was like, I heard a voice go, surrender. And everything stopped. And it was almost like, what would have happened if you hadn't retaliated? And then all of a sudden I lay down and I stopped retaliating. And I lay there, I had my eyes closed and I opened them. And as I opened them, my wife's there. And the blue eyes are looking into mine. And I said, everything's going to be okay. Come with me. And I held her hand and I died. And I went into the spirit world and I was no longer with my wife. I was no longer a physical body. I was spirit. And it was incredible. I was like, oh my, this is amazing. The sights, the sounds, the feeling was just incredible. And I wanted to stay. I didn't want to go back. And then all of a sudden I heard a voice say, people need you. And I finally came back into the physical body. And I can remember it was like really, because I suddenly sprung up. Like this was halfway through the ceremony, but in my head I thought it was all over. And I went straight to one of the not the shaman, but one of the people, one of the supervisors. What do we call them? So,
yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. So one of the, one of the people there, I was like, I've seen it. I've seen it. I know what it's all about. I've seen it. He's like, and I went back to my accommodation, but it was the worst thing I could do because I was still under.
Yeah.
And I then went back to my accommodation. I started drinking water. So I diluted all the ayahuasca.
Oh.
So it starts coming back on. But then I'm sat there in my room and it's like, I was like, got this pad out and I'm like writing stuff, all this stuff. And the one thing that really, I still think about it to this day. I use it a lot. Pain screams the loudest when it's dying. Mm-hmm. And this is so true because this is what we need to really appreciate. When your life starts to change, and this can be the fact that you have started to think about something more positive. Let's again go to a relationship, for instance, because everyone can relate to that. You've got a hostile relationship that's just serving you no longer. You need to get out of it. And how many people have been in that situation where you get into that crunch point, it's getting so angry, so everything, and you can just put a Band-Aid on it and go, tell you what, just give me a hug. But you can't do that. At the end of the day, pain screams the loudest when it's dying. You have to let it die. Let it die because it's the birth of something new, and let's focus on that. But this is why, again, that goes back to Breakpoint. That is your Breakpoint moment. But if you're forever going back, putting a Band-Aid on something because you want that to, you can solve that right now. You can because even when pain screams the loudest when it's dying and it's the birth of something new, there's still resistance. There's going to be resistance for a while, but as long as you keep moving forward with that positive direction of where you want to be, that resistance will become less and less, and then it's the new you. And that's great. And this is what we find so hard, don't we? Embracing the short-term discomfort. And that's the way that we are wired. We're wired to embrace the comfort. And that leads to long-term pain. And that can be our choices, our jobs, our relationships. And it's the small things at the end of the day. We are wired to go the path of least resistance and conserve energy and do not do things that I look at it like this, right? I think this is where we struggle. There's no stronger driving force than that, than our survival blueprint. Mm-hmm. So we've got that on one side, but then you've got the soul that wants to experience, wants to have all these amazing adventures and everything else. And that's where this conflict, as far as the survival blueprint wants, or as far as the survival blueprint is concerned, it would be happy if you sat in the corner and just procreated and ate food. Some people are doing that.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean? But, and that is the survival of the species. That's ongoing, blah, blah, blah. But then we've got this other side of us that wants to, we want to get out there, we want to explore, but this is stronger. Survival is stronger and procreation, continuing the species is stronger than its desire. And this is why it takes so much more on this side. Mm-hmm. To actually do stuff in life and change things. And it's a constant battle because this is the default program. Like I said, 0 to 7, you've got that, you've been programmed by your environment and everyone around you and this, that, and the other, but you come with a set program and that is your survival instinct. That's you before you even start thinking. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? So that really is what we're fighting against. And that's where I believe there's that inner conflict. Because everyone knows it's like, I tell everyone, I said, what you've got to do, you sit there on the couch thinking like, have you heard of the couch to 5K?
No, I haven't.
It's a bit of a thing. It's a fitness thing where, a lot of people, let's get you from the couch to 5K. And there's a training program.
Yeah.
It's a big thing in the UK.
Okay.
And I always say to people, I said, if you sit there, at the end of a hard day, you should be going out training. Mm-hmm. But you're sat there with your packet of biscuits, dunking in your tea, and your brain is going, you've worked hard today. Don't go today. Start tomorrow. If you listen to that, you listen to the program, the same will happen tomorrow. And the same will happen the next day. And this is why it's so important. When you do hear that, you contradict. And just by moving, taking action. Because you can't outthink bad behaviors. You can't think a thought that's going to change your behaviors. You need to actually take action. You know what I mean? And again, this is where people get it wrong because they don't understand it takes you actually moving in a certain direction to change.
Mm-hmm.
Not just thinking, well, if I'm going to think myself out of this, it's not going to work.
No, that's definitely not going to work.
Yeah.
You need experience. You need to have action.
Take action.
Yeah, exactly.
Take action. Otherwise, it's never, I talk a lot about goals because, I ask corporate entities, I do a lot of corporate stuff, and I say, who in here has goals, has a disciplined process, daily process that puts them on the track to their goals? Not many people ever put their hand up. Say that's normal. And I said, but here's the thing. Your subconscious mind is a goal-striving, goal-getting machine that stops at nothing till it gets what your dominant thoughts focus on. So whether you're choosing them or not, you're driven towards goals.
Yeah.
That's just the way the mind is. So this is why, in that 60, 70,000 thoughts people have a day, that's a lot of thoughts. You imagine with the dominant strain being negative, you've got to start thinking of the things or the outcomes that you desire. Otherwise, you end up with a load of outcomes that really don't suit what you're looking for whatsoever. And then when it comes to, I came up with this other thing, the fact, why is it that we're so focused on? And I think even listening to Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza touches on it. But they say, why is it all negative? And it's not just because people would prefer us to be negative. It's just the fact that you imagine where we came from. You look as long back as time goes. You're never going to remember all the nice fruits you had. You're going to remember the bad berry that you had that made you ill and could have killed you. And that's where it comes from. If you want to go that far, that's exactly the reason we're more dominantly negative than positive.
Yeah.
Because there's no benefit to thinking of all the good stuff when it comes to survival.
No, I think we have to deliberately remind ourselves of the good stuff.
Yeah.
And the good stuff in the past, in the present, and also in our future.
And it's a constant effort. If you let the foot off the gas, the negative comes back in.
Definitely.
And you never, I still have negative stuff, but at least I look. First of all, I understand there's yin and yang, there's opposite negative of everything, and it's like I just, when I hear it now, I'm just like I appreciate that. I'm like, yeah, that's your amazing humanness, but listen, you're not welcome now. I'm going to think something positive.
Exactly.
But I think at the end of the day, a lot of people just don't get. You need to be the thinker of your thoughts. You need to be the emotional observer. Otherwise, you become the victim of your emotions. If you're just not thinking or anything and not being aware, you're just part of the program.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That makes us just a blind animal, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. And that's like an animal hasn't got an analytical mind. They just do what they do.
Yeah.
And that's what we're becoming.
Yeah.
If we allow it to happen, that's what we become.
Yeah. We should allow ourselves to expand and to impact more and to visualize more.
Yeah, and people think they think I am my thoughts. You're not your thoughts. You're the actions you take from your thoughts.
Yes.
So I think there's an easy way for people to understand this, and that's certainly my motivation to get out there and try and explain it in such a way that even the skeptics start to pay attention. But it's a big old world. You're never going to change everyone.
No, I think we have to find peace with that as well, because there's too much out there that is not working for the people. We cannot work against everything, right?
Yeah.
So you touched on discipline, on your motivation, on visualization, habits, even the soft skills, like I just called them. I don't know if people want to call them like that. What are your goals for, if you talk about visualization, what are your goals for the next couple of months, years? Yeah,
well, it's been an interesting, one thing which is a blessing and a curse for me is the fact that I'm really creative, and so is my wife. So when we started this business it's like when I was in that house and then suddenly we got the opportunity for TV, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. And I always thought, look, it's going to be a one-off. You need to make hay while the sun shines now. So websites, this, that, and the other. Anyway, it kept on going and going and going. So, and this is quite a bit of a lesson because a lot of people will relate to this, is the fact that, when we were doing a business and then we'd think, as things were getting tough, and I've got to admit, you know, I'm not, I don't think any of us are actually, but I'm not designed to sit in an office. So when it came to, like, you know, running a business is tough. It is hard work. And whenever it got sort of tough and it got a little bit low in excitement, we would just develop another company. You know what I mean? Because that's exciting. For something, you know, this is exciting. So I ended up with about 6 companies.
Oh, really?
You know, not all doing great, but, you know, and this was the problem, you know. They had all these different things. I had a, like, supplement company, I had a fitness app, I had this, that, and the other, I had loads, and I just kept accumulating. Oh, this is great. Look at me. I've got all these, you know, and it's like, it got to the point that it's like, you need to get back to where you started. You know, when I went into that house, I had one vision, one goal, one dream, and that was to start Breakpoint. You know, that Breakpoint, that business, to create a globally identified brand recognized for positive growth and development of others. Global's a big number. That was always my dream. And I always said, and basically what happened is, as far as I'm concerned, I was in that house, visualizing every day, thinking nothing's happening. And I believe that I did it so religiously and so much and so intensely. I was given such a prize, and that was a TV. That again was a blessing and a curse, because that took me on a different angle. And before you know it, I'm starting to get distracted along the whole celebrity route, doing TV shows and this, that, and the other. So anyway, what's done in the last 7 years, we have now actually, you know, we had a big office, industrial unit, training rooms, this, that, and the other, so much kit and everything else, vehicle, loads of stuff. And then we've got to the point now where I called it downsize to capitalize. And that is basically shedding everything off, going back to our core focus, which was to offer what we do on a global scale. And really, we, you know, when we bought that industrial unit, we then got forced into a more virtual space because we couldn't have any courses and stuff. So we turned one of the rooms, the training rooms, into a studio, and I was doing back-to-back talks to corporates. So that really pushed us. It was like the universe going, God, give him a sign. Tell him, just show him, give him something. And it pushed us into that space. So basically, it's got us to the point now, we've now got an app, which is all backed by AI. So all of my content, everything becomes the knowledge base of that app. And then I've got training programs and everything on there to really mentor people. You can't change people in an hour. You can't change them in a couple of days. First of all, they've got to want to change. Second, it takes constant and repeated behaviors to change. As you know, like I said before, practice, repeat. So the only way I can really do that, and I'm conscious of I don't want to do a course and just take the money and that's my job done. I want to change people's lives. The only way we can do that, and the only way I can scale up, because the only problem, again, we're having a face-to-face company, is the fact that people want to see the person off the telly.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And you can never scale up if that's the case.
No.
So the app is brilliant for us, but it's only for the corporates.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So that is our big focus at the moment, and really getting into some of the really big corporates. Construction's a big industry for us as well, because there's a lot of suicides happening in there. It's male dominated, and there's a lot of suicides in there. So we're not sort of focusing on any, but that is certainly one of our go-to industries that we want to affect. So there's that. And then really, it's like I'm climbing Everest next year. And I think it's really important for me that there are so many people out there, they do something great, and then that becomes their benchmark. You know what I mean? And I am not going to be a benchmark of the past. It's like the Special Forces was something I did a long time ago, and I'm really proud of it, and it's great, but it's back there. You know what I mean? And I'm not like sailing off the whirlwind of that. At the end of, like, my talks and stuff I do, I only talk a little bit about the Special Forces, so really it's about creating a story you'd love to be told. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think the answer to a lot of people's issues, especially when it comes to mental health, is the fact that we always need to be looking for something that's bigger than us. And that's a dead end street. Well, it's not a dead end street; it's an open ended street. Yeah, you're never gonna get there, which is great. You know what I mean? It's just like always keep on pushing, always looking for something bigger. But and doing Everest and that inspires people. It inspires me. It motivates me. They're my personal challenges. But I just believe that if I'm going to push out content out there and say this, that, and the other, that I need to be the one that is an ambassador of that. Yeah. So
I think that's a beautiful mission.
Absolutely.
Lots to work on.
Yeah. Well, I think as well, we're coming into some hard times. I do believe it's going to get pretty tough. And I think the more people can connect with themselves, and the less they are controlled by the outside world and external factors, I think that's the solution to it. At the end of the day, another thing is, and I have a lot of people that say, "Oh, your platform, you could have such a voice," of really objecting to a lot of the stuff that's going on. I'm like, if I was to sit there getting angry with everything that's going on in the world, what does that do?
Yeah. Indeed.
What does that to my personal energy?
It drains.
And as a collective, what does that do? So I can be a lot more powerful by inspiring other people, as opposed to complaining about everything that's going on and this, that, and the other. And this is where I think a lot of people are getting lost, because they're so fixated on complaining about everything and this, that, and the other, that it's just creating a very negative energy. And a lot of it is, we're being pushed at the moment to really division. It's division. Yeah, everything. Definitely. And when we talked about the male and female, that's almost like, we've been so separated, severed. Yeah. That is a male. That is you're black. You're all this. We're all humans.
It's all division, indeed.
Yeah, and all this is really key. For us to be squabbling and in this and be divided, that's exactly how you control a nation.
I believe so too.
You know what I mean? A lot easier to control when people live in fear and they hate each other.
Yeah.
And they're addicted to alcohol.
Yeah. It definitely does not help our society. No. I think we need more people like you on the forefront, Ollie. Not in the army again, but empowering people, making people stronger.
And people like you, Yorick, doing things like this to get the message out there.
Trying my best.
Yeah.
Trying my best.
And then the more of us we can create, the more, and this is another thing. It's like the Biohacker Summit. And I see this in every walk, anything, like I see this in every walk of life, like mountaineering, for instance. And people, it's like you shouldn't, if you are a biohacker, share your knowledge with everyone.
Yeah.
Don't hold on to it like it's a status of greatness. I've got this, I know all about it, I'm not sharing it with you. And this will be my message tomorrow is, this is share with as many people as possible. Share your knowledge. Start to empower everyone you can around you.
Yeah.
But, it's like the mountaineering world as well. They're so sort of, they're so cliquey. And it's like, we've got to stop all that, stop all the clickiness, invite everyone in, get them there. You can climb a mountain if you want in life. You know what I mean? You don't need to be a professional to climb a mountain. You've got to start on a small one.
Sometimes it's that easy, right?
Yeah. But, I just think if we can combat that division, we will get to a good place.
Take control of yourself and get together.
Yeah, get together. Yeah, break down these divides. I actually saw Jim Carrey, on the. It was quite interesting because it was leading into this, and he was like doing one of his interviews. And it was only a few minutes, and he was just saying, "Why am I an American? What makes me an American?"
Yeah,
we're told who we are, where we live, what we do, and all this and the other. He's got such a good point.
Yeah, it is a good.
Everything is like, and this is where all wars stem from. People. Territorial and everything else. It's like
really
makes
religion.
Yeah,
I don't.
Oh, religion. There's over 3,000 religions.
That's what I'm saying. I do not watch the news, but I cannot hide from the war, of course, in Israel.
Yeah,
and people ask me, "What do you think of it?" I completely excluded myself from the discussion.
Yeah,
because it is only it's. I don't even know all the names of the people who are fighting there.
No.
Because they're like, no, it's Israel. No, it's the Palestine. It's Hamas.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not there.
I just, also on top of that, Yorick, I just don't trust the source of information.
Exactly. I had the podcast like 3 days ago, and they were like, they killed babies. And the people in my conversation were like, where's the footage?
Yeah. This is the thing, right? Which now you mention it, I am going to mention it because This was apparently some reporter that heard on the grapevine that someone had said this. And then before you know it, the media's jumped all over that. I mean, can you imagine? Try and think of a worse thing to really stimulate hatred. They're beheading babies. I mean, is there anything worse you could actually do? But there is no footage of it.
Exactly.
And then apparently I saw yesterday the footage of some burnt babies is an AI generated picture of a dog.
Oh no.
Yeah, in the same blanket, but it's AI generated. So, and listen, you can sit there and say, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. I was in a war zone as a civilian, okay, not in the military. And I was on the ground, stuff was happening. And then I was going home and seeing what the papers were reporting. And it was lies.
Exactly.
Lies. So, sorry, and you've just got to make sure that you have a valid form of a source of information. Yeah, if you haven't got that, in the absence of that, please don't.
Getting together, let that be the bottom line of this story.
Yeah, getting together,
and
sharing, educating, and empowering. And I think another thing on top of that is the fact that, you know what, if someone wants to tell me that Elvis is still alive, good for you. If you believe that and that's your view and opinion, I'm happy for you. You know what I mean? But don't push it on me. You know what I mean? That's fine. And I won't. I'll do the same with you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is my opinion. What do you think to that? Yeah. And that is what makes a really strong and evolving society, because we evolve from different ideas and different views and opinions. And we're living in a world now where you've got to believe this, and if you don't believe this, I'm gonna really be confrontational with you.
Yes.
Just appreciate if someone's got an opinion and they feel that they've got justification for what they're thinking, allow them to voice that opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's not hurting other people,
no,
so be it.
Again, if we want to, always want to create value for the listener, of course. And in that particular podcast I mentioned, it was my Dutch. I also have a Dutch podcast.
Yeah.
People, I can imagine people thinking your podcast is about personal leadership. Why are you talking about conspiracies?
Yeah.
But taking control of, if you want to look at the news, taking control of how you want to perceive that news and think critically is also a form of personal leadership.
Yeah. It's self-leadership. This is where it starts. And this is why I say, I do a lot of leadership stuff. Yeah. And I always say to them, leadership starts within.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Because if not, and if you're being led by everything that's being shown to you, you're not a leader. You're being led.
Yeah.
You're being. It's like you got a bull ring around the nose and you're being pulled.
Yeah.
So it's and like we said at the very start of this podcast, it's the ability to make your own choices.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And that is leadership. It's like, I choose to believe that. I'm not so happy about that. There's something not right about that. I mean, the whole thing about Hamas. I mean, about that thing that was in it. I just look as a military special forces former operator, right? And I'm thinking, so hold on. Israel got this thing, right, called the Iron Dome. Have you heard about this?
Somewhere,
It's a missile system that basically it's like, stop. So knowing the Israelis are probably one of the most highly technically armed nations out there, especially when it comes to CCTV and everything like that. So we're going to parachute in daylight. How does that happen? Into an open air rave and take hostages. I mean,
seems unlikely.
I can't imagine. Can't imagine going for a set of orders. Right. One against one of the most highly technical enemies out there. We're going to get in a plane and we're going to fly over there. We're going to jump out, skydive into an open air rave. And I'm like, something's not right.
No.
Something's not right. It just, something. And whether it I'm not saying, I'm just saying something's not right. It takes someone, I just think, really?
Yeah, me too. So that's why I stay away from that discussion, even at least publicly.
Yeah.
So I think we covered a lot of ways we can take ownership of ourselves. Maybe we should called a biohacker summit, leadership summit, or something like that.
Yeah, well, it is, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
leadership itself, and that is where it all starts.
That's how I always try to translate them, because biohacking is far-fetched for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So it's just taking control of yourself. I think we covered that in a beautiful way, this conversation.
It's been amazing.
Yeah, it was. It was. It was also very nice to share an ayahuasca story.
Yeah, because absolutely.
Yeah, it was definitely very special.
Are you going to go back?
Yeah.
Ayahuasca?
Yeah. Not for anytime soon.
No, it's something I think about a lot, and it's actually I'm speaking to some friends that have there's a private retreat out in Portugal.
Really? Oh,
So
that's a good place.
We're looking to do a private.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you should look to come.
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I'm definitely.
I think they've got psilocybin there.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think that would be because there's some people I would like to take to experience that, and this you haven't got the excuse of having to fly all the way to Peru or
no, exactly that is
or Costa Rica or something like that. So it's accessible.
Portugal is very nice.
Yeah.
Is there, after all the messages we already covered, one takeaway you'd like to share with somebody who is at their breakpoint?
I think the bottom line is the fact that when it's really dark and you just feel there's no way out, you just got to understand that there always is. And like I said at the start of this podcast, it's like, regardless of your situation, you always have a choice. And sometimes I used to say, and there's a lot of talk about, all you need is belief. With belief, you can do anything. But sometimes belief isn't enough because you haven't got it. And like for me, when I started, Special Forces selection, I didn't believe that I could do that. But what I did have is courage, and courage is the ability to throw yourself into any situation without having a guaranteed outcome. So it's really just being able to put that step forward that counts. You don't have to believe, but just take action on something you want to change, and it will happen.
I think that's a beautiful message to wrap it up.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for your time, Ollie.
Yeah, thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
It's been great. Thanks.